Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, and access and enjoyment of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Vernon Smith. Vernon provides communications leadership for the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration's Office of the National Marine Sanctuaries, whose mission is to conserve and protect special places in the ocean. Now, the National Marine Sanctuaries are celebrating 50 years of ocean conservation and stewardship, and I had the great pleasure to meet Vernon. I think it was back in April with his colleague, Grace Botita Williamson, when they presented to the Outdoor Writers Association of America's virtual meeting that we have once a month. And I thought to myself, wow, I need to do some podcasts with the National Marine Sanctuaries. I reached out to Vernon, and as they say, the rest is history. So Vernon, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining today.
Howard, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, when I was listening to the presentation back in April that Grace had presented, I swear this light bulb just went off in my head. And I know I had messaged you during the conference, during this meeting, hey, I'd love to chat with you about having you guys on the podcast. And at first I was thinking, yeah, one podcast episode, but then having this conversation with you, the idea that, maybe the Outdoor Adventure Series, the podcast, we can help celebrate this 50-year milestone of the National Marine Sanctuaries. And so I'm grateful that you were at least open to have that conversation. So thank you.
Well, Howard, I'm grateful that you were open to having us participate on your podcast, because we really appreciate, the opportunity to talk to people who may not be familiar with National Marine Sanctuaries the way that they may be familiar with the national park system. And, we believe that we're just as special as the national parks. And as you mentioned, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we've got lots of things going on, lots of reasons to celebrate. And so I'm really, really thankful and appreciative to have this opportunity to speak with you and your listeners.
Fantastic. Now, I would love to have you share with our listeners some examples of some of the great, teammates at the National Marine Sanctuary who are going to be joining us on the podcast. But I don't want to be remiss, because you and I actually have 1 degree of separation, from a certain city in this country. But I would love if you could at least share a little bit about your background before we dive more into the marine sanctuaries. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure, Howard. Before I joined the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, I was a member of the news media. I was an ink stain wretch, so to speak. I was a newspaper reporter and editor for more than 20 years. I've worked at newspapers in Florida, in Michigan, in Texas, and I've covered a lot of interesting beats, and I've had a lot of interesting assignments that have taken me all across the country. But one of the things that has always been a constant for me has been my interest in environmental conservation, my interest in the ocean and lakes of the United States. And so when I decided that I was ready to try something different and move to Washington, D.C., one of the things that I pursued was this job that I have now at the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And if I'm being honest, Howard,
Please do.
Before I joined the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, I didn't even know that National Marine Sanctuaries existed. I knew of some of the places like Monterey Bay and Florida Keys, but I didn't realize that these were National Marine Sanctuaries. And so one of the things that really motivates me and drives me now is to try to do everything I can to bring these places to the attention of fellow citizens and people who just may not realize that they have probably at some point in time experienced the beauty of these places and never realized it. So that's my job, my mission at NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries.
That is fantastic. And I can actually empathize with you. I grew up in the Detroit suburbs, and I suspect that for our listeners, that's kind of the degree of separation between Vernon and I. When he was in Detroit, I was in Detroit. Who knows? We probably crossed paths at a American Coney Island or a Delicatessen or Shields Pizza or Buddy's Pizza. Who knows?
Or a Tigers game.
Or a Tigers game. This was, yeah, this was the old stadiums. This would have been the old stadium still. All right.
Absolutely.
On Trumbull. I love it. We probably did. My experience or awareness was actually very similar. First of all, I did not know that the National Marine Sanctuaries existed. I knew that there was the Florida Keys. I know people go out down to the Keys to go diving. Growing up in Michigan, obviously we have the Great Lakes, and I know there are a lot of places where there are shipwrecks, and I know fishing, diving around those shipwrecks, around the bridges, and is just very popular. But I never knew until this meeting back in April that there were actually National Marine Sanctuaries, and really starting to plan it with you, how we're going to interview, who we're going to interview, which sanctuaries perhaps will be a part of this conversation on these podcasts. I'm like, oh my God, there's a whole other world out there. And I wish I had 20, 30 years back to explore these, but you got to, you do with what you have. Okay. But, and I also discovered, Thunder Bay, and actually my brother, I think I told you, my brother-in-law is from Thunder Bay, Alpena, which is where the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary is. And I'm thinking, oh, wow. Gee, I wonder if the folks at the sanctuary know my brother-in-law's family, but that's a whole other story. But I love that these sanctuaries exist. I love the fact that this conservation and stewardship, as well as recreation, is intertwined with each other. You have all of these, and for our listeners, we were able to kick off our first interview. It's not been published yet, with Michelle Johnson, who's down at Flower Garden Banks Sanctuary, which is in the Gulf of Mexico. We know because of climate change, many of these sanctuaries are, perhaps they're healthy today, but with climate change, there's a possibility they're going to get stressed. And the scientists like Michelle and others who will be on the show, they're deeply concerned about that. And so there's programs in place. And so, Vernon, I love the fact that not only are we going to learn about the National Marine Sanctuaries, talk about how with the guests who will be coming on this 50-year anniversary celebration, how that's being celebrated. But also, as you had said, first and foremost, let's educate and inform, make people aware that these sanctuaries exist. So again, thank you for your willingness to kind of entertain this conversation. I appreciate it.
Well, Howard, I really do appreciate having this opportunity because, National Marine Sanctuaries belong to all of us, and, they're sources of great pride, and they're places that all of us can go to experience the power and the beauty of the ocean and the Great Lakes. And I think that's what makes National Marine Sanctuaries so special. Currently there are 15 National Marine Sanctuaries and 2 Marine National Monuments that span more than 620,000 square miles of ocean and Great Lakes, from Washington State to the Florida Keys, and from Lake Huron, Alpena, to American Samoa.
And I think for avid outdoor enthusiasts like myself, like yourself, there are any one of these spots is an opportunity to not only to explore and learn, take the family, enjoy being outdoors, and again, just raising the awareness that they're out there, and make plans to visit them if you can. And I love that. Now, I alluded to that we first met Grace Batita Williamson when she was on our conversation with the Outdoor Writers Association of America, our monthly call back in April. You were on the call, and I hopefully will have Grace on the podcast as well. I know this week, we had the conversation with Michelle Johnson from Flower Garden Banks. I don't know if it's set in stone yet, but can you give us perhaps an inkling of who else we might be interviewing during these podcast episodes?
Oh, for sure. So in addition to Michelle Johnson, she's a research coordinator at Flower Garden Banks, which is the only National Marine Sanctuary in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got a really exciting lineup of speakers for future podcasts. Dr. Leela Hatch is a research ecologist with our Science and Heritage Division. And one of the things that's really interesting about Dr. Hatch is that her research focuses on ocean sound and acoustics. She is interested in better understanding how sound and noise affects marine life across the sanctuary system. And more important, or equally important, she's interested in trying to help us as a society come up with solutions that will, improve the lifespan for many of the marine animals that live in the ocean. If you think about it, you think about a lot of marine animals, they depend on sound in order to communicate, in order to thrive, to reproduce. And so it's important that they be able to, do these things in a way that will allow them to, continue to exist.
Sure.
Another guest who will be on a future podcast is Joseph Hoyt. Joseph Hoyt is our Maritime Heritage Director. And he is interested in, his work sort of focuses on the America's past as a seafaring nation. Now, you might not realize this, but, the greatest, collection of the relics that represent our past as a seafaring nation, lie at the bottom of the sea and lakes in our National Marine Sanctuaries. And so, the National Marine Sanctuaries, we protect these sites. And not only are we working to protect these sites, we're working to make these sites accessible to the public so that if you're a scuba diver, at many of our sites, we've installed these mooring buoys so that divers they don't have to worry about trying to anchor in the water. They can just tie off on these mooring buoys and then dive to the shipwreck. This is one of the things that we do to try to, again, make the wrecks accessible and also protect these wrecks for future generations of divers to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Gray, Howard, you mentioned Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Well, Jeff Gray is the superintendent there, and we'll be talking to Jeff because Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary was the first National Marine Sanctuary that was established in the Great Lakes along the shores of Alpena, Michigan. Interesting thing about Thunder Bay is that it includes, this heavily trafficked stretch of water that was infamous for unpredictable weather, murky fog banks and sudden gales and rocky shoals. So it became a place where a number of shipwrecks reside. And at this point, more than 100 shipwrecks have been discovered. And we estimate that there are an additional 200 more shipwrecks that are likely in the sanctuary. What's interesting also is that because of the Lake Huron's cold waters, clear waters, it has helped preserve these shipwrecks. So when you're a diver and you go explore Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, in many respects, it's like going back in time, and which divers tell me who've been to the sanctuary say that it's just an amazing experience.
Wow, that's fantastic. I almost feel like I'm gonna have to get in a plane and go up, because I may go back home, at least once or twice a year. I mean, Alpena's only, I don't know, 6 hour drive from Detroit, so who knows? I may just show up at Jeff's doorstep.
I'm sure they'll have the coffee on and ready to show you around.
There you go. There you go. Fantastic. Now, I know we've arranged a podcast episode with John Armour, who's the director of the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. So that's exciting to be able to pull him away from what I'm sure is a very busy job like yours to chat with us.
John is a really nice guy, really sharp guy, and he's very, very committed to the mission of National Marine Sanctuaries. He's been with NOAA for about 22 years, and he's served in several positions at the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. John he's responsible for our strategic vision, and he'll be talking to listeners about, a lot of the work that we do with our research partners, our education partners, our sanctuary advisory councils, and I'm sure he'll also get into the sanctuary nomination process. John will also, I suspect, be interested in talking with your listeners about things that they can do, things that you and I can do to protect the ocean, opportunities for us to volunteer, and this is an important point, I think, Howard, even though we may not live on an ocean shoreline, we all have an opportunity to make an impact, make a difference, because, the lakes and rivers, all of those rivers eventually flow into the ocean. And so that's why it's mindful that, we think about things like, the pesticides that we might apply to our backyards, and, how do we dispose of motor oil and other chemicals, because, we don't want to see any of that end up in the ocean.
Sure, sure. Fantastic. Well, we're definitely looking forward to having that conversation with John. I'm sure there's probably a couple others in the wing that we just need to confirm, but, I appreciate you, sharing a sampling of who some of our guests are going to be. And again, I appreciate the time you're taking to share really this special project with our listeners, because I'm very excited. I can't wait. And before we head out, I do have a couple questions for you. I mean, because I really want to, go a little deeper with you for the benefit of our audience. I mean, you are an accomplished journalist, and now this wonderful opportunity that you've had for a number of years, being responsible for media coordination and leadership as a communicator for the National Marine Sanctuaries, which is a part of NOAA. What are some of your aha, or perhaps one aha moment that you have in your career once you've made the shift from, the print media journalism to working for an organization like the National Marine Sanctuaries? What's one of your aha moments?
Well, I think for me, when I was a journalist, the thing that motivated me was, the opportunity to go out into, the community and, cover stories that hopefully would inform and educate and, help my fellow citizens in their, as they go about their daily lives. And here, the mission is in many respects quite the same, in that the jobs that I do, the job that I have and the work that my colleagues at the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries do every day. You know, we are motivated because this is something that is bigger than us, bigger than, it's not about us as individuals. We are inspired to want to make the planet a better place, to improve the fortunes of the creatures and ecosystems that we are entrusted to protect. So that's one of the things that motivates me. And this really, I think, struck home for me about 5-6 years ago. I had an opportunity to join some of the researchers at Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary off of Boston as they were out in the sanctuary doing some humpback whale research. And Howard, one of the most humbling things that I've ever experienced happened when there was a humpback whale and its calf. And the calf approached our research vessel, came right alongside it and looked at us. And, when you're looking at this calf, which is, the calf itself was at least, 30, 40 foot long. And that's just the calf. And you're looking at this creature and you're thinking, oh my God, this is just so amazing. And to think that, I have an opportunity to try to improve the conditions, to try to help, this whale and its calf continue to thrive. I mean, that is so humbling. And that's what makes, the work that we do so rewarding.
Wow, it's fantastic. And I have to share, I'm envious, Vernon. I had the opportunity a couple months ago to interview a director of Gotham Whale. They're up in New York City, and they do research on behalf of some of the research institutes, because they take people like you and I out and go whale watching. And who knew that there was, humpback whales in New York City? But the fact, and I'm thinking, I have never seen a whale outside of, beluga whale at the aquarium in Chicago, or, an orca at some other park, man-made park. But the fact that you've seen this whale, the calves, and I'm thinking, it's up there with the Northern Lights and an African safari and seeing lions and elephants. It's like, I need to see these. And it just, because I know, much like I shoot the Milky Way and I see the stars, I'm in awe of the stars, but I'm equally in awe, as I'm sure many of our listeners are, in awe of what's available to us right here on the land. And that story just kind of hits home. It's like, I so want to see that. I so want
Howard, I hope you and your listeners get an opportunity to do just that. There's nothing quite like being out on the water, being in the environment of some of these, amazing creatures. And you just realize, just how small we are as human beings when you see, a majestic humpback whale.
Yeah.
It's an experience that I will never forget.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Now, Vernon, before you head out, and again, I want to thank you for your time. We've probably gone over a little bit of what I estimated for us, but I hope you're okay with that. But any final insight that you would like to leave with our listeners about your work, what you have learned, your journey, that you think they would benefit from? Because you've had a couple different hats on in your career, and this wonderful work that you're doing now for this wonderful organization and the service, the government service, the public service that they're providing. But any insight that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Well, I think it's probably something that many of your listeners have heard before, but I think it's true. And that is that if you can find work that speaks to your passion, it really doesn't, it doesn't feel like work. Now, let's be honest, working, in government, has its ups and downs. There's, there's the bureaucracy part of government that I don't like. But all in all, I feel like I'm very, very lucky because I really enjoyed my career as a journalist, and I'm having a lot of fun working as a communications coordinator for NOAA and the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And I've been lucky in that I've been able to use many of the same skills that I had back in my journalism career, reporting, writing, editing. Those skills were transferable to my current job. And I think that if people should, who are contemplating a career change, it's probably a good idea to think about, to do some sort of a personal skills assessment and just sort of see, what skills that you have that are, potentially transferable in another arena.
Sure. One of your sister agencies, the Department of Labor, and they have a service called ONET, O*NET, and they have an assessment right there that does just that. And I take a lot of my career coaching clients there because if they're uncertain of what, based on their skills and interests, what they can do. And so I love that you just shared that because, it certainly extends to other services valuable services that the government provides. So thank you for that. One final item, if our listeners would like to learn more about you, NOAA Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, where are the best places for them to go?
Howard, the best place for listeners to go would be to our website, sanctuaries.noaa.gov.
Okay. And I
And we're
know
also on,
go ahead.
and we're also on social media, on all the major social media platforms.
Fantastic. And we'll definitely be providing the backlinks to the website and to the social sites as well. And, I've been perusing Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to no end. I don't have a TV, so that's how I entertain myself. When I'm not working and producing podcasts, that's where I go. Vernon, thank you so much again. One, for taking time out of what I know is your busy day to chat with us here on the Outdoor Adventure Series. And most of all, really for just being open to this opportunity that I'm extremely grateful for, which is to help the NOAA Office of the National Marine Sanctuaries celebrate their 50 years of ocean conservation and stewardship, and helping me put this together. So thank you.
Thank you, Howard. It's been a real pleasure.
Very good. Very good. Thanks. Well, listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a quick final chat. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Vernon Smith, National Media Coordinator at NOAA's Office of the National Marine Sanctuaries. And boy, what we have in store for you. I don't know exactly how many episodes we're going to end up with, but you are definitely, by the end of the series, going to be aware of the National Marine Sanctuaries. And so wherever you live in the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, the territories, you're going to know about NOAA. In fact, even folks all in other parts of the world are going to know about NOAA and the National Marine Sanctuaries. Really excited about the guests that will be joining us. And really, this episode with Vernon was really for the purpose of kicking this off. We'll have this episode up pretty quickly, and then we're going to follow up with our episode we had with Michelle Johnston, a research ecologist at the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary. And then, in the coming weeks, we'll have more, obviously. And really, in the meantime, do go out to the website at sanctuaries.noaa.gov so you can learn more about the National Marine Sanctuaries, and also check the hyperlinks that we're going to provide back to their Facebook, Instagram, YouTube pages, and any other social sites that they are on. So if you enjoyed today's episode, do let us know. You can visit us on our website, outdooradventureseries.com, our LinkedIn and Facebook pages for the Outdoor Adventure Series episodes. And also we are on every, and I do mean every, podcast directory. So wherever you consume your podcasts, just check out the Outdoor Adventure Series and you will find us. So like us, the episode, share it, comment on it. We definitely want to hear your thoughts on this as well. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, your family, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.